War communism was rooted in the poverty of the areas controlled by the Bolsheviks. Poverty in terms of food and other natural resources that used to come in from the periphery. It involved shock. Having those people and those commissars in the homes of the former middle class and the former wealthy was intended to prove to everyone who was in charge that the old order had been overturned. And what you didn't see, although I assume since you're sensible people, what you were able to perceive was the implicit threat in everything those two little bullies with red armbands did. How they were daring him to complain, to resist, so that they could squeeze and punish him for being what he had been, which was a doctor from a middle-class background. When the Civil War ends in 1922-23, and the last White Army is driven out of Russia, the Sovnarkom, the group that runs Russia under Lenin, is surprised at a new idea, new to them, coming out of Lenin. What they had done with war communism, which is what it was called, is they had placed everything under government control. All food production and distribution, all medicine and medical care, housing, transportation, everything was run by the government, like a good totalitarian system. The problem that Lenin foresaw is that this was too big a shock too quickly. And what people were doing is they were no longer functioning in a productive fashion. You can't get blood from a stone. You can squeeze it all you want, you're not going to get blood from it. And Lenin is persuaded that the thing to do is set a new course with what he called the New Economic Plan, what historians call the NEP. And what the New Economic Plan is an attempt to mix government control, the dictatorship of the proletariat, in other words, with a small amount of very limited free enterprise. The NEP would allow farmers to grow a little bit of extra food that they could sell in a farmer's market. Now, that may not seem like much, but to the hardcore communists that Lenin was in charge of, who wanted to collectivize all the land and have all the farmers share it and work under government control in collectives, the idea of farmers being able to claim ownership over the produce that they grew, it's the people's turnips, it's the people's potatoes, according to the communists. But Lenin says that people will work harder if they do this. Lenin also, as part of his NEP, is going to give peasants what they wanted. He's going to allow the big landowner plantations to be divided up amongst the peasant farmers so that each farmer gets a bigger plot of land of their own. Now, that land is given to them to use by the government, but they're going to be able to control it. And to a peasant, if you're able to control something, basically you own it. So it appeases the countryside. The NEP is Lenin's attempt to make a peace after the Russian Civil War that will allow the Bolshevik regime to stand without being overthrown, without constantly dealing with rebellion. Russia at this time was such an agrarian country with so little industry that if the Bolsheviks continued to try to rule in the name of the working class of the urban factories at the expense of the peasants in the countryside, they would, Lenin believed, ultimately fail. So the NEP maintains government controls over everything on a large scale. But in the countryside particularly, by allowing peasants to control larger tracts of land, by allowing peasants to take extra food above and beyond what they were required to give to the government to distribute to the workers in the cities, by allowing them to then market that stuff, make some money, and improve their farms the way they'd always wanted to, Lenin is going to, with the NEP, create a few-year buffer that will allow the Bolsheviks to consolidate their power over government and over the countryside. It won't last. Lenin never intended that it would, but it's a step designed to assuage the worry of the rural working class and give them, at least temporarily, something that they thought that they had been fighting for the revolution and during the Civil War. They did not want collectivization of their farms. They wanted larger farms to farm, and they wanted an opportunity to benefit from being better farmers than their neighbors by being able to sell the extra produce. The NEP was extremely unpopular amongst the more radical theorists within the Communist Party, but Lenin is able to pass it through. Unfortunately for Lenin, he has a stroke, I think in 1923, and that stroke is going to debilitate him. He's going to be bedridden for a lot of the time, and he'll be able to be posed in a chair with a blanket over his waist. But his mind goes. Now, one of the last things that Lenin does is he tries changing his political will, which is his advice to the Bolsheviks going on. Up to this point, his wife, Nadezhda Krupskaya, was the caretaker of that will. But Lenin had changed his mind about one of his followers, Yosef Vissarionovich Yugashvili, known to history as Stalin, Man of Steel. We'll talk about that. Some of Lenin's last words before the stroke took his mind was that Stalin should be pushed back away from the center of power. He's too rude. He's too brutal. He doesn't work well with others. Of course, when Lenin has his stroke, Stalin uses his power to have that information suppressed, to marginalize Lenin's bride, Krupskaya, and to begin a path to power, which we will talk about next time. Anyway, thank you for your attention. Sorry about the many videos to you at home, and we'll see you then.